I'm Jason Sullivan of Rathbone Group, and this is on subrogation. This video is going to focus on pursuit of PIP subrogation in the state of Massachusetts. Massachusetts is known as a no-fault state, and like most no-fault states, it requires that its drivers have PIP coverage. The law that governs PIP in Massachusetts is under Chapter 90, Section 34M. We'll just refer to it as 34M throughout this video. Under 34M, unlike a lot of statutes that are broken up with subdivisions and little point a, little point I, and numbers, this is just a couple of long paragraphs. So let's unpack exactly what's in each of these paragraphs. First, it requires that PIP carriers that issue policies provide their drivers at least $8,000 in PIP coverage. Second, it gives immunity from tort liability to any driver or owner of a vehicle that's required to have PIP coverage and has the PIP coverage in place. And third, it also gives a 2-year statute of limitations to make a first-party PIP claim. It's important to note this 2-year statute of limitations because it's different than what we'll be using for the subrogation claims. Finally, a couple paragraphs into Section 34M, it gives the subrogation rights for insurers. So there are two main categories where there are subrogation rights. First are where we have a motorist who is at fault and either not required to have PIP or was required but didn't have the PIP coverage. That individual or entity doesn't have tort immunity. So examples of this would be an uninsured motorist, someone who just didn't purchase the required insurance, or an entity that didn't have to have PIP coverage. So this might be like a transportation authority. Many transportation authorities in Massachusetts and in the Boston area, they're not required to have PIP, they don't have PIP, and so therefore they're not immune from liability and can be pursued. Also, an out-of-state driver who's not required to have PIP coverage, who then drives into Massachusetts and causes an accident, they also can be pursued for PIP. The other category is a motorist that is at fault for a collision but does have PIP coverage. The statute doesn't give a right against that motorist directly. Rather, an insurance carrier that pays PIP has a right to pursue the at-fault motorist PIP liability carrier directly. And if that PIP liability carrier is in Massachusetts, you can recover the amount that was paid for PIP, as well as the costs and expenses in adjusting the claim and collecting the PIP. Frequently, I see these extra expenses added in as a percentage of the claim. So if you as a carrier pay out a full $8,000 under your PIP policy and you're going to be pursuing another Massachusetts carrier, you can add in, let's call it 10%. So your claim is now $8,800 instead of just the $8,000 that was paid. Let's go into some common scenarios. So if we have a Massachusetts insured who's involved in a collision with an insured Massachusetts driver, well, you're going to have a PIP subrogation right against that other driver's insurance carrier. Not the driver themselves, but that insurance carrier. And you can seek those extra costs and expenses allowed under statute for adjusting and paying out on the claim. If you have a Massachusetts driver with an out-of-state driver who get into a collision in Massachusetts, well, that driver is not required to have Massachusetts PIP coverage, so they're not immune from liability under the statute, and you can pursue that driver directly. Now, hopefully they have an insurance carrier with liability coverage that's going to step in and pay. In that scenario, you'd be able to get what you paid under PIP, but you wouldn't be able to recover the extra expenses that are allowed under 34M because you're pursuing a tortfeasor and an insurance carrier who are not providing Massachusetts PIP coverage. A final scenario would be a Massachusetts insured who's involved in a non-Massachusetts loss against a non-Massachusetts motorist. Take, for example, your driver is now traveling over state lines and they're in Connecticut, and they get into a collision and the other driver's at fault. That is a bit more complicated analysis because now you have to look at what does Connecticut law allow for recovery or pursuit of a subrogation claim against a tortfeasor? And if that state does not allow direct pursuit against that tortfeasor or their carrier, does your insurance policy written in Massachusetts give you a right of reimbursement if your insured does pursue a personal injury claim and have a recovery? That analysis is a little bit deeper than we can get to in one of these YouTube videos, but those are the issues you're going to want to spot. What's the law in the state where the loss happened? And then what rights does your policy give you in terms of any right of reimbursement if your insured pursues a bodily injury claim? For On Subrogation, I'm Jason Sullivan of Rathbone Group. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us at video@rathbonegroup.com. That's the long and short of it.